Welcome to today's video. Today's video I'm going to be interviewing Greg, who is the CEO of Octopus Energy. We're going to be going over some things that Octopus Energy are doing in the energy market, some serious questions about some things that we've heard about Octopus. I'd just like to introduce Greg from Octopus Energy. Greg, how are you doing today? How are you doing coping with lockdown?
Well, first of all, Nick, thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm embarrassed to talk about the lockdown because I think for a lot of people, either the direct effects of COVID or the indirect effects through the lockdown have been really difficult. Whereas I think for me as an individual and for us as a company, actually things are going pretty well. In fact, I think we're still the only large energy company that still answers the phone as usual. So I think the transition for us has been not that bad, but I know a lot of people are struggling.
Yeah, I mean, you're one of those companies that's quite lucky that you're quite a techie company, so you're already pre-set up for working from home, I presume, diverting calls and answering customers' inquiries remotely.
Yeah, in fact, I mean, we've always had, because we build our own technology platform, it's all in the cloud, we've always had teams who work from home anyway, providing things like out-of-hours support to customers, and they've got access to the full back end. So I think when we went into lockdown, we announced at 2 p.m. on a Friday that we were going to move to working from home. And 9 a.m. Monday, everything will start from home. Today, I'm the only person in our London office, and I think our other 3 UK offices are all totally empty.
Where did Octopus Energy start? Where do you, what's your kind of EV background? Do you have an electric vehicle? What are you green, or are you just a guy who runs an energy company that just happens to be green?
Yeah, look, I mean, the two are connected. I, by the way, was a sort of passionate environmentalist when I was at university. I joined Greenpeace when I was 16. I used to wear a T-shirt with every day, pretty much to the chagrin of my girlfriend, with a picture of a car with sort of fumes coming out the back and a big red cross over it. It's been something that's important to me for decades. We set up Octopus Energy in 2015, launched in 2016. We're backed by Octopus Capital, which is the largest investor in solar energy in the UK. And from the very beginning, our mission's been to make energy cheaper and more transparently priced, greener, and with better service. In terms of being an EV driver, I first drove an EV, by the way, in 1987 when I did a milk round, but that's cheating. And I've always had low carbon vehicles, so I deliberately used to have things like a 98cc motorbike because I just didn't want to emit any more pollution than necessary to move my mass around. But I got my first EV, I guess 3.5 years ago when our son was born, and my partner wanted a big car, and I just couldn't countenance a sort of a diesel, which are the main big cars. I live between the A4 and the High Street in Hammersmith. It's such a polluted area, and just the thought of adding to that pollution was, beyond my conscience. So we got an electric car, and it's funny now because I guess 3.5 years ago they were less mainstream than they are now. I mean, still a lot of people, a lot of your sort of audience will have been in electric cars a lot longer than that. But back then, it still felt a bit experimental, and I did worry that my partner would make me take it back after a couple of weeks. But actually, within a couple of weeks, there was no going back. She told everyone we met how great electric cars were. I became a passionate advocate for them, and I think that's part of the reason we set up Octopus Electric Vehicles, because we realised that so many people don't know that an electric car is not only environmentally better, but total cost of ownership is probably cheaper, and definitely is becoming cheaper than petrol cars. And that the experience as a driver, even where I live, where I've got no off-street parking, I can't charge at home, even for me, it's a better experience than a petrol.
It's funny that we actually share something quite in common there, which is we both bought an electric vehicle for our other halves before checking with our other halves that they were happy having an electric vehicle.
To be fair, we did discuss it beforehand, and she was open to it. But I think it was an experiment to find out, could you live with one when you don't have off-street parking? And the answer for us has been definitively yes.
Well, I went one step further. So we lived in a terraced house where there's no infrastructure where I live. I live in the Peak District, so there's no infrastructure really. Not when I was looking at electric car. So I said to the wife, I said, look, EVs are going to be the future. I don't want to drive anything that's not an EV. I think we need to move house now and start thinking towards getting a driveway. And because this is before hubs and charging in public really existed, and it wasn't really in my foremind that was going to be the future. So I sold my house and bought a house on a new estate. And when the guy said, "Oh, why are you selling your house?" when he came around to view it, I said, "Oh, well, I want to sell it so I can buy an electric car." And they all thought I was crazy. We moved into the house, and I said to the wife, I said, "Look, we're in the house. Your car's knackered. It's falling to pieces. I can't replace it with anything else." I said, "We're going to have to get an electric car." She said, "I don't want one yet. I'm not ready." And I went, "Well, if you're not ready now, you're never going to be ready. So let's just get one. And if you don't like it, I'm in the trade. I'll resell it." And she will not get rid of it. She will not part with that car now. It's her favourite car that she's ever had. And that's the thing with a lot of EV drivers. Once they finally got their hands in it and they're in it, they don't ever want to change. But it's nice to see that a lot of Octopus Energy now branched out to Octopus electric vehicles with Fiona running that side. I spoke to Fiona, had an interview with Fiona, which, depending on when I edit this video review, will either be before or after you. But there's a nice little thing where Fiona's talking about the 2035 ban and how she thinks that they're not going to, that maybe they won't even hit the demand of people who want them in time, manufacturing wise, and whether we're going to have to look at Chinese car makers to make more cars for us so we can meet that demand of electric vehicles by the 2035 ban.
Even without the government action, it's going to take over anyway, because that's what people want. And by the way, get me and Fiona on together sometime if you like, because she also drives an electric vehicle, and I think she drove a hydrogen-powered electric vehicle like probably 10 years ago, maybe longer. She travelled the world to find one. So
I think I've heard her mention that before. I went to there's a fully charged B2B meeting up in Manchester, and I'm pretty sure she mentioned that. But I mean, my personal opinion is hydrogen should only be used in rockets, and that's where it ends for me. Hydrogen. I just think that electric vehicles are doing it now, and as we're seeing bigger and bigger battery tech and more charging spots, it's just there's no point having hydrogen cars, especially seeing a hydrogen car is just an EV with a power box built into a power station.
That's why she did it 10 years ago. I think now, or indeed longer than that. I think it was worth £6 million at the time as an experimental vehicle. But I think now the electric revolution is obviously going to be battery powered. And frankly, when you talk about bigger and better batteries, half of us don't even need bigger batteries. What's the average UK commute? It's 9 miles. You can charge once a week with a relatively small battery and still meet a lot of people's needs. So I think a wide range of options is appropriate, from quite small batteries through to quite big ones.
Yeah. Right. So, Greg, big question. You're now sort of a top I think when I first started with you, you didn't have many customers. Now you're massive. I believe you're in the top 6, top 7 sort of thing. So what kind of makes you different to the traditional top 6? What's different about Octopus Energy compared to traditional top 6 suppliers?
Look, thanks for asking. And by the way, I don't know whether we're number 6 or number 7. So we're either just in the big 6 or we're just outside. But of course, we had 0 customers less than 4 years ago. In terms of what makes us different, we started as a team not from the energy background. The team that started this business were from technology and from kind of consumer-facing businesses. And the whole thing really was recognizing that energy companies typically have around a 15% gross margin. And they've got, 2 products, typically gas and electricity. Amazon has a G&A cost of about 2% and has 300 million products. So energy companies have traditionally just been so bad at technology, they've been incredibly inefficient. And we thought what we could do is build the technology to make a very efficient energy company, use that to pass the savings on to customers, deliver better service, because why do you get bad service from energy companies? It's because systems are bad. And finally, and just as importantly, to innovate towards a green future. The only way we're going to be able to make the green revolution more affordable and faster is by capitalizing on the benefits of renewables. There are days, in fact, I think today, when we're able to generate more renewable energy than we can use as a nation. And that means that Traditionally, that is seen as a problem. They pay the generators to turn off, and they're spending a fortune on grid level batteries. And instead, we can bring customers that energy and pay them to take it off national grid.
Yeah, so you've got a very inventive type called Agile, where you see negative pricing. So you actually pay customers to use electricity during these negative pricing schemes. But I don't know if you've heard, but oil, as of today, has hit negative pricing. But there's no petrol cars being paid to fill up at the petrol station, so and never will be. But it's really interesting the amount of EV customers I see. Oh, damn, my car's fully charged and Octopus have gone negative pricing. I'm going to have to drive around the block and try and fill my car up. I mean, it's completely turned thinking on its head. I mean, I know in the past that the only people who used to get paid to use energy were big factories. So big factories used to get a call from the national grid. Can you turn all your machines on, run everything, and we'll pay you for this thing. But it's nice to see that you've actually taken that concept and now giving it to the customers. Because I presume in the past, the Agile isn't something new. It's what you as an energy company have always had to trade on.
Yeah, actually, it's more complex. Interestingly, in the background, most energy companies, including us, we have to buy our power ahead. In fact, for a lot of our customers, you would be buying up to a year ahead, so that when the price is highly fluctuant, we don't actually see either the good or the bad side of that. Agile is very unusual in that we don't buy that a year ahead, we buy it a day ahead. And so the pricing that we give to customers is literally, I think it's 2.2 times whatever the grid pricing is day ahead. And then a fixed fee on top of that for all the fixed costs. By the way, if you ask about why it's 2.2 times, that 2.2 carries, the taxes, the network charges, the transmission charges, all that stuff. But it is literally just a formula that's public on our website. And it's day ahead pricing.
Yeah, and I'm assuming there's also a bit of profit built into that 2.2%. You're not going to sell energy for free at the end of the day. So, but I mean, so even on the negative price, when prices go negative, Octopus have bought that energy the day before. I presume you're just using predicted algorithms based on what your customers averagely use on that day or when they see those prices.
Yeah, it's actually complicated, Nick. If people use Agile effectively, we lose a lot of money. Right. So the way that Agile works, sadly, the way that we have to pay grid charges and distribution charges, there's a lot of fixed cost in there. So I think it costs us something like 6 or 7 pence per kilowatt hour in those fixed charges, even before we pay for the actual energy on top. And by the way, even when the energy is coming from a green source like a wind farm or a solar farm, we still pay green taxes. I mean, that's bonkers. It's bonkers that we pay more tax on green electricity than we do on carbon emitting gas, right? But at the moment then, what we do is we bundle up all of those costs and we try to put as much of them as we can around peak pricing time. So if you're using Agile at peak times, you're paying those costs. And then outside of those times, essentially, we're passing on the grid charge and kind of we hope that in the round, the consumption pattern will cover those fixed charges. But there are so many customers that are incredibly good at using Agile, like using virtually no energy at peak time and really shifting it to the cheapest times. They cost us a lot of money. But you know what? That's just an investment for us in kind of proving to the government and to the grid and to other countries and to Ofgem that people will embrace dynamic pricing. Yeah. And when they do that, it's good for the grid. It's great for net zero. And we hope that in the long run, by proving it works, they will change the way that networks and transmission charges work. And then I think everyone's a winner. So really what we're trying to do there is pave the way to a renewable future.
Yeah, and I presume I also know that you cap the price on Agile. So I presume if the grid prices go above that and people are using it during the peak times, you're losing money on that peak.
Yeah, that capping is interesting. Before we introduced Agile, we introduced something called Tracker. And Tracker varies every day, whereas Agile varies every half hour. And Tracker wasn't capped. And what we found was our modeling said people don't need to worry about the spikes. They're very, very short. And over the year, they're almost irrelevant. But they worried people. So I think to avoid people worrying, we put a cap on Agile. And I think when we modeled it, the cost of that cap is pretty tiny. But we might as well carry that risk because we can model the risk, whereas obviously the average household can't work out for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm still on Go, and I'll probably seeing all the negative pricing this week as well. I'm going, oh, maybe I should definitely switch to Agile. Um, you were just talking about the technology previously. So there's other technology that built into your customer service that I've noticed. So for example, for me, I'm a busy bloke. During the day, I do not have time to ring you as an energy company to sort problems out. And what I was really amazed by is I can message you on Facebook, Twitter, personal private messages, or email. They all centralise to my account, so list all my emails there. But rather than me sat on the phone trying to ring you, I can email when I've got time. Someone picks it up and replies back with an answer. And 9 times out of 10, I've always had the same person reply. Weirdly, but I've also rang you on the phone, and unlike other energy companies, you also answer pretty quickly. But what I thought was really neat is you have the hold music is personalised to me.
Yeah, so I think like the key to all of that is that we built our own platform that goes all the way from the energy industry, right away from interfacing with metering and transmission and generation kind of data we have to receive, right through to the website and even the telephony. Everything and billing is all in the same platform, and that gives us a lot of control over it. The reason you often get the same person, by the way, is that our customers are looked after by small teams. So we've got about 10 people in a team, and those 10 people do everything. So they'll answer the phones, they'll answer emails, they'll do live chat or Facebook chat, whatever. But they'll also deal with billing issues and back-end problems. And those same 10 people will look after about 70,000 customers. So when you deal with us, the same 10 people will always deal with you. If you phone us, we'll spot your phone number and route it to the right team. If you email us, it's even better because we know your email address and get it to the right team. And that means that what you'll normally get, and I see this a lot, whether we've been able to solve a problem or not, people tend to say we're at least very, very helpful and friendly. And, that small team, it's about 10 brilliant young people, a lot of graduates, a lot of people who are passionate about renewable energy and passionate about social justice. So hopefully that does shine through. And the tech is really about enabling that, whether you're dealing with a person or indeed whether you're self-serving on the website or via your phone or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing that is also useful about using the same person to get back to your complaint is normally, traditionally, when you ring the call centre or email someone, they'll go, "Oh, I'll get back to you. I just need to go and speak to billing. I just need to go and speak to them." And what they tend to do is, rather than going speaking to them, they just transfer you, and then you have to re-explain your problem from one. And for a customer, it's very aggravating when you've got a problem and you're having to re-explain your problem to 3 different people because the first person transfers you to the wrong department, and then that wrong department then transfers you to the right department. So, I mean, apart from very one minor issue I've ever had with Octopus, which was resolved pretty much within about an hour of me ringing up, mainly the only reason I've ever emailed you or PM'd you on sort of Facebook is to test your response times. Which is, yes, probably very annoying for those 10 staff, but I'm always recommending Octopus, and I don't want to be seen recommending a company that suddenly gets slower. So as you've got more and more customers, I'll occasionally send a message, and I think he's called Jake, the guy who always replies to me. Poor Jake replies to me pretty much quicker and quicker every single time I go to pester him. So and you've won which best supplier? Is it 3 years on a trot now?
I was just going to look at your account there to check who it was, but yeah. So we've 3 years in a row. Which supplier of the year? U-Switch supplier of the year. The energy industry awards supplier of the year. Utility Week supplier. Most recommended, best customer service, best place to work. There's a lot of awards. Now, by the way, I know that some people don't get great service every time, and we can talk about that in a minute if you like. But we've got 1.5 million customers. So I always say, look, if we keep 90% of people happy, we've still got 150,000 unhappy customers, right? And by the way, we're growing all the time, so that number will grow. And if we've got 1% who we've really let down, and we do sometimes royally screw up, that's still 15,000 people. If the average problem takes 6 weeks to fix, if it's really, really, really bad, then you've got about 2,000 people at any one time who are going to be royally pissed off with us. And by the way, rightly so. And I think that's why I publish my email address. If you email me, either I'll answer one of my directors, It's always a senior person, and look, I can access every customer account. I can look at any issues. I can see any complaint, and that transparency is designed really to be a backstop, because we will let people down. But when we let people down, we don't want them to end up in some sort of call center hellhole, which I think is what happens elsewhere.
Yeah.
And so, none of this is kind of arrogance that we're great, because we get things wrong. But I do hope we've got a lot of pressure release valves when we get things wrong. Still not perfect, always room to improve. But yeah, that is kind of the philosophy behind the way we organise.
Yeah, no, I like the honesty that you admit. Look, if we do mess up, that that is even a small percentage in the grand scheme of things. That is a lot of customers, and I think I don't think there's any company that have 100% happy customers. But the fact that you want to try and meet that, and the fact that I think 1 year you were Which's only recommended supplier. 2 years, yes. So the fact that they're an independent body, completely independent, their review score is funded only by members. So to score as the only recommended supplier gives an indication that Which obviously see you as a highly trusted source. I mean, I've got all my family with you, so sister, mother, dad, gran, neighbours. I signed up my entire street on Octopus. And trust me, if any of them had problems, that I'd hear it. They'd tell me, and no one I know has had problems. However, this is the age of the internet, and being on EV forums, occasionally I see people crop up with complaints, and the complaint I often see crop up is something to do with SMET meters. So first of all, people having problems getting new meters fitted, SMET 1, SMET 2, which when they first started kicking off, a lot of people still replying to comments that don't issue anymore. So the comment before was people can't get a SMET 2 meter, but that was in between SMET 1 and SMET 2 fading out, and that was out of your control. I know that, and I want to make that clear to everyone watching. When SMET 1 finished, the government weren't ready to introduce SMET 2, and that fell the issue onto the suppliers, not the actual regulator, whose technical fault it was really. But how are you doing now with SMET 2? Are you up to speed on fitting them? Are customers still waiting?
It's great questions, right? And I think, first of all, no defensiveness in this at all. But I think because of Agile and Go, we're the only energy company that has like thousands of customers clamoring to get a smart meter, and not just any old smart meter, clamoring to get one that we can read reliably with half-hourly data, all the way consistently, day in, day out, month in, month out. And I think that means that we are the ultimate guinea pig for the smart meter system, and particularly because people, EV drivers in particular, will typically get tremendous value. They'll save a lot of money on these tariffs. So there's a real and totally understandable frustration if the smart meter, any aspect of smart metering, means that they can't get on the tariff, or if they're on it, it doesn't work properly. Very briefly, I mean, if you want, I can quickly go into it. We've written a load of blogs by them. If anyone's got a problem with smart meters and Octopus, or indeed actually smart meters generally, we've tried to be really transparent about how the system works and the current status at every moment in time. And I think, by the way, the irony is that SMETS 1 was working wonderfully well for us. But of course, SMETS 1 goes dumb when you switch. So the government were very keen to introduce SMETS 2. And essentially, they forced the pace of SMETS 2 by, in essence, kind of not banning SMETS 1, but making it regulatorily very difficult to install SMETS 1. And I think for most energy companies, where a smart meter is really just a replacement for a meter reader, at least currently, they're not using the smart capabilities very much. And certainly not massively to customer benefit. They don't get the same customer pressure that we do to make it work. Now, where we are as a sort of infrastructure at the moment, I think SMETS 2 in the southern region, we got installation pretty reliable quite a while ago. And a few months ago, we got it pretty reliable in the northern region. The reason for the regional differences is the government appointed different communications networks and actually different communications technologies, and therefore different specifications for the meters, and therefore different training for the engineers in the northern and southern region. And by the way, the northern region, I mean, it's quite a complicated thing, but the line is sort of from northern England up through to Scotland.
Is that to do with the DNO then, Greg, or is that to do with is it just like a split?
Yeah, no, it's just where it's split, and in fact, the line is not clearly along DNO boundaries. So there's quite a complex map about where where the northern region and the southern region apply, and it really can be like, within a single village, a bit might be on SMETS one, on northern regions, a bit maybe on the southern region. And the technologies are totally different. One of them's a low frequency, low power, long range signal. That's the north, and the other is much more like cellular signals. That's the south. But anyway, put that aside. That's a government decision made, more than a decade ago that kind of is now kind of part of the infrastructure. The next thing is that when we install a smart meter, you're actually getting a whole load of wireless devices and other connectivity, because the electricity meter is the one that transmits the signals into the networks I've just talked about. It also communicates with the in-home display, which, by the way, has a two-way connection because it has to download tariff details. So you've got quite a complex network there. And then they have to talk to the gas meter. The gas meter obviously isn't connected permanently to power, so it has a long life battery in it. But all those pieces of kit need to speak with each other. And actually, there's another bit of kit, which is the comms hub. And the comms hub is the one that talks to those networks, and that sticks onto the top of one of the meters. So you've got this kind of complex infrastructure in the house. And then when the signals are transmitted, obviously going to two different networks, each network then makes its way into the government-controlled data communications company, and they then spit the data out. In fact, it works both ways with something called an adapter. An adapter is a company who kind of take the data out of DCC and then will funnel it into the energy company, who then put it into their systems and use it typically for billing, but also, for analytics, and we use it for forecasting as an example. Now that network really only came into existence, all the bits of that infrastructure really only came fully into existence in the last 12 months or so. And what that means is you've got, in theory, the protocols by which they all talk to each other. They're very well documented. But when you do these things in real life, you discover all of the edge cases. So in the early days of SMETS 2, there were a lot of things like, at one point, there was one company were discovering that some installations were working and some were failing on identical meters with identical protocols. And they discovered it was down to whether the engineer left the meters in the van overnight, because they took longer to boot after install if they were cold. And if the meter hadn't booted before the comms network had, then you could end up actually bricking a meter. I can't remember those details, may be slightly wrong, but the story about the temperature is the core there. And there are lots of those things. We discovered those as an industry. And I think there are two things now in Octopus world. So the first one is we're learning a lot about things like data reliability, because our billing requires a continuous half-hourly data stream.
Are you the only energy company that take half-an-hour billings?
I think others do as well, but we reflect it back to you, the customer. So if you look at our website, we're showing you the half-hourly. Some do that as well. But then we're using that as a basis for the bill. And if you look at an Agile bill or a Go bill, we give you the half-hourly price and the half-hourly consumption continually, right? I mean, every day. And
yeah, so even your billing system, when I've had the bills, I've had all the end of my bill has all the usage in a bar graph, and what and also the cost basis. So I presume Agile's exactly the same, just filters out the exact half-an-hour usage base and cost base for every customer.
That's right. In fact, Agile is even more complex because the half-hourly price is changing every half hour. So you've got every day there are about 48 different prices, and we break all that out. But I think that degree of transparency then leads, particularly, a lot of EV drivers are very, very understandably really interested in this stuff. And of course, it matters because it's all about money. And so you bring all that together, we're the company that having to discover what happens if you get a hole in the data. Now, sometimes, by the way, the meter has buffered it and we'll get it through later. What happens if it didn't do that? What happens if that data's lost? Because how do you bill someone when the price was different every half hour and you haven't got all the half-hourly usage. So we're kind of working through a lot of those questions as we go.
I presume that's why certain customers who haven't had a bill for, say, long periods of time, I'm presuming it's because you've got gaps in the meter data for them.
Yeah,
so you don't know what they've used in those hours. So how do you fix that? Is it something that the meter will eventually send through, or?
Yeah. If you look at the blog on how we debug an issue with a SMETS2 smart meter, you'll find that we kind of create the flow chart there of all the things that can go wrong. And you send it a message and then hope you'll get some data back. Now that message has to work all the way through the system I just described about, and then the data has to work all the way back. And because of the security protocols, you've got very little in the way of logging or analytics. So there's an awful lot of trial and error till eventually we get there. Now, by the way, for each error type, over time, we might discover how to solve it more rapidly. But the first time you're discovering a new error type or whatever, it can be weeks or even months of trial and error. I think you then there's quite a lot of things that actually sort themselves out over time. But because people really want to understand what's going on, we do a lot of manual effort to try and fix it. And then you find that just compounds the issue. By the way, over time, all these issues will disappear. And look, as Octopus, I really hope that what we're doing here is pioneering the smart grid. But I also recognize, it's the innovator's dilemma. We put all the investment in. We do debug all these issues. All of our rivals are signed up to our tariffs. They'll learn how we solve it, and over a period of time, they'll benefit from your tech and your sort of infrastructure that you built for them by solving all these complicated issues. By then, we'll have powered away to an even better future. So,
well, to be fair, Greg, I think that brings me on to my next question for you. Really, I did a video a couple of weeks ago about how green is your electricity company, which was a Which research guide published in a couple of papers like the Times. And it was showing that there's a lot of finger comments here, green energy companies selling people green energy that aren't actually buying any green energy. What they're doing is buying I'll let you say the word in a minute. They're buying them from Eastern European countries. Obviously, your power for your house isn't coming from Eastern European. They're just offsetting their sort of green energy to those contracts. Your own, like you said before, your own Octopus Investments, and they own a lot of solar. So I presume you're buying Regaros from Octopus Investments. So at the same time, you're also a net contributor to building more green stuff.
Yeah.
I think that sets you apart of being a more trusted company. I mean, one of the companies that was highlighted, which one company you mentioned before, was OVO. And I don't think they were buying any green energy from the UK at all. From if I remember rightly in the article in the Times.
Yeah, so I can't comment on obviously on a
company.
But I think first of all, I often get asked, how can you do green energy when each electron isn't kind of individually shuttled like a train down a different wire? But I think it's a bit like banking. If you earn your money, for example, doing podcasts, and then you put your money in the bank, when you take your money out, you're not taking out the same pound coins and same pound notes as you deposited, but you're still taking out your money, and that money came from podcasts. So the key really is, matching what you're putting in with what you're taking out. And so we as a company, provide 100% green electricity because we put in as much green as we take out. There are a lot of complexities in how we look at that. So the question about regos, some people say, are regos greenwashing or whatever? And I was talking to, I will talk about another company. I was talking to Juliet Davenport, who's the brilliant founder of Good Energy, and she's their CEO. And I mean, I think it's about a 15-year-old business, maybe longer. And Juliet describes Good Energy as being deep green. They build a lot of their own generation. So when the customer is buying off them, they're buying from the exact generation of that company, even though it's going through the grid like everyone else is. And then there are companies that are describing doing what you do, which may be greenwashing or light green. And I think I described us to Juliet as being mid-green. We've got a great blog on this. If you go to our blogs, it's one called Does Octopus Energy Greenwash or something like that. But let me give you a little bit of our thoughts on it. So the first thing is, the way that technically we meet the Ofgem requirements for green energy is actually through regos. We buy as many regos in the UK as cover our customers' usage. There's about 10 or or so of our energy we buy directly from particular solar and wind and other renewable generators. And we've got over 100 generation facilities through a joint venture we've got with Co-op. All those generation facilities are director agreements, and they're all obviously 100% renewable. But then actually, you want to look at the bigger picture. We're owned by Octopus Group. Octopus Group is the UK's biggest generator of solar energy. And Octopus generates around 4 terawatt hours a year of green energy. And our customers use around 4 terawatt hours. So you can also look at it as a group, we're building and injecting as much green energy as our customer base use. But with all the companies, the big challenge is, how do we meet our renewable customer needs when the sun's not shining, the wind's not blowing? So even the deepest green companies will have times when their needs are being met by non-green sources, but they'll use the certification of REGOs to make sure they meet that need. But the bit I'm most proud of isn't all of that, because there's how we source the energy is important, but far more important than that is what we're doing to make the world green. And I think this is where we and our customers can be incredibly proud. Tariffs like Agile and Go are critical to creating a smart grid, right? Essentially, they should be designed to be able to soak up green electrons when they're abundant. And EV drivers, it's a wonderful coincidence of history, or maybe it's deliberate, that the EV revolution is happening at the same time as the renewable revolution. Because if we can take those green electrons when they're being generated and fill our batteries with them, then we're essentially able to make green generation more cost effective more of the time. And that means we can then inject more green energy the rest of the time. And we end up in a virtuous circle where we'll squeeze out fossil fuels economically, because green energy and the ability to shift the load of when we charge EVs go so well together.
In essence, by creating tariffs like Go and Agile and shifting green customers, EV drivers to soaking up that green energy, and if you like, punishing them for using it when there's no green energy, you can shift customers' demand to meet those things. So you're only soaking up with the energy you're producing, which is quite remarkable, really.
Yeah.
I do know that when you did a conference to a load of big six energy companies, they all laughed at you when you said you were going to shift customers' demand.
Yeah, I mean, it's truly bonkers, right? If you think about the train system, if we didn't have kind of peak and off-peak pricing on trains, then at peak, you just have even more crowding than you already have, right? Or you'd do what we do in energy, which is build more and more tracks. You'd have so many tracks to meet peak demand, and then the rest of the time, the system would be empty. That's how we run energy. And instead, particularly if we're going to make it not only cost efficient, but absolutely drive renewables, we've got to stop kind of this mentality that you just use it whenever. What we've got to do is reward people who use it when green energy is abundant. And look, we've got tens of thousands of customers doing this at the moment. And by the way, if anybody has a bad experience with a smart meter joining Octopus in order to get one of these tariffs, that is people who are doing exactly what people used to say wouldn't happen, which is they're caring about when they use their energy.
Well, it's quite funny because most people have spent their time trying to avoid to have smart meters fitted and don't want engineers coming around messing with the electrics. Where you're actually, people are angry that they're not getting their smart meter fitted immediately. Next, I want my smart meter now, and which is bonkers that people are really, really, really pushing that they want it immediately.
Yeah.
I know people who have lived in sort of old houses and never want a smart meter. As soon as I explained Octopus Go and Agile to them, suddenly they wanted a smart meter, and it's just great to see sudden change in demand from people when they hear that.
It really is, and I think Smart Energy GB, which is the organisation whose job is to promote smart meters, have said, look, Agile in particular, but Agile and Go are the best marketing campaign for smart meters. And I love that. And by the way, I should be really clear that 9 out of 10 customers who sign up for a smart meter get one without any fuss and go straight into Agile and go, and it works beautifully. And by the way, once they're working beautifully, you're typically going to switch between them same day. People are doing all kinds of stuff. And then we're launching things like Go Faster, so people can choose their own cheap slots.
Yes, I mean I've just come off. So I'm currently part of the Go Faster trial, which I think you call him Agile Phil started doing. So you gave different time slots. So you gave a 4-hour time slot, you gave a 5-hour time slot, and a 3-hour time slot. And I think it was. But you can correct me if I'm wrong. But I think it was 4.5p, 5p, and 5.5p for the extra hours that you wanted to go ahead with them. But what I thought was quite neat. Is obviously those times. So the 8:30 time, for example, that I picked for 4 hours. I know that's not really a relatively cheap time for you. So you're definitely losing money on that tariff without a doubt. But it wasn't about that for you, was it? I'm presuming it's about data.
Yeah, look, it's actually a really important battleground in energy at the moment, right? There are companies, and probably the majority of the energy industry, that want to do things like put a remote control switch on your smart meter so that if the load on the local network is high, they can literally turn off or throttle your EV charging or your energy usage, right? Those companies, we need to show them, and we need to show the authorities that instead of doing that, we can vary price and people will then react accordingly. So instead of having this old-fashioned sort of Soviet bread queue approach to electricity, we've got something that's more like a modern market economy, more like supermarkets. That is, we'll put the stuff on sale when it's abundant, and it'll be expensive when it's not. And people, like particularly very high users like an EV driver, have got the ability to swing that system by making the most of it when it's cheap. And if we do that, we can avoid kind of being railroaded into a world where you do have a smart meter that turns off your EV charging when the load is high. So that's the reason it's so important. But actually, Nick, there's a fascinating thing about the peak in the UK. The peak is basically 4 p.m. till 7 p.m. right? And that's because that's the period when businesses are still operating and people are getting home. They're putting the oven on. They're putting the dishwasher on. You've got this very high domestic load at the same time as a business load. And actually, the peak falls away very quickly in the evening.
Right. I mean, I'm presuming from this Octopus Go trial that you've done, I'm presuming did you see results that you were expecting? I mean, I'm presuming you don't want to give too much away for any of your fellow energy company providers that might be watching this, but I'm presuming the data was interesting.
I mean, yeah, we'll blog about it at some point. It is amazing how effective, varying the price and letting someone choose the slot is in terms of the ability then to shift the load to the points when the system can take it.
Do you think you're going to make any new energy tariffs based on this data then? Are we going to see more? Is there going to be more than just Agile and Go?
It's funny, isn't it? Like a couple of years ago, the only creativity in an energy tariff was typically, the incumbents, and indeed actually many of the new companies, work out how cheap they could make year one and how high they could raise year two in order to kind of lure you in and then trap you on a high price, right? Without you noticing it. And that was what tariff creativity was. You would never have imagined, like what have we launched? We've launched the daily tracker, we've got the half-hourly Agile, we've got Go, and then I think there are 24 variants of Go Faster. This unbelievable innovation based around really just how do you price a commodity at a point in time is what's going to drive a renewable grid. And there are so many more to come. I think we will experiment with hundreds of ideas over the next couple of years. And I say experiment with them. I mean, look, we don't experiment in a lab. We put it out there. We're very open with customers, by the way. These are beta products, and things could go wrong. And I think, by the way, that's something really important to note. Like everyone on this is basically an early adopter trying something new. And when we prove it works, we're making the world greener and cheaper.
I'm very, very excited to see what possible tariffs you've got coming. And to actually say that I'm excited about seeing what energy tariffs are coming next feels a very odd saying to say, but I am. I'm quite excited to see. I went to, so you invited us to a lovely arts expedition when you do. Because again, you all, as a company, you do lots of other green things on the side that people might not know about. I mean, a couple of the few, if people want to look at, you do a lot of tree planting and stuff like that, CO2 offsetting that way. But you mentioned something in particular at this on your speech about gas and wind turbines. Do you want to give everyone that little fact? Because I thought it was amazing.
Yeah, look, the cost of renewable energy keeps on falling. By the way, solar panels, I think, have fallen, or solar energy has fallen in cost by about 200-fold in the last 40 years, right? The same curves that apply on computing costs, that every year computing gets, well, every 18 months you double the computing power per dollar, or whatever the variant of Moore's law is. There's an equivalent really happening in renewable energy. And wind power has come down so much that I think there was some kind of forecasting of how much it was going to come down. In 2018, they predicted a price for 2025, and we hit that price in 2019. It's falling so fast, and it's now, apart from the very, very recent drop in oil prices, which have knocked through to lower gas prices, but on the whole, we're getting to the point now where it's going to be cheaper to build new wind farms and just shut down gas stations, not even let them run to the end of their life. We're getting to the point where it is getting cheaper to replace existing capacity, even in gas, with new capacity in wind. And the way that we'll make that happen, on a bigger scale, faster, we need to change the tax regime, and we need to move to the kind of tariffs like Agile and Go that mean that we can make the most of the abundant green electrons. Because at the moment, National Grid spends £300 million a year, I think, turning off wind power in Scotland when they've got nowhere to send those green electrons. And so instead of that, if we can have a sale, cheap electrons now, whenever we've got abundant generation, we can really move the green revolution faster and cheaper.
Yeah. I think this is the first time you've ever had midday prices on price point. I mean, cost of all energy is weird during COVID-19. It's ruined everything. So oil prices have been weird. The energy market has seen more negative pricing during, traditionally, busy times because all the factories are shut down. So, but you're saying before COVID-19 and when all this starts to settle down again, it is cheaper to get rid of a gas plant completely and build wind.
That's right. And the only thing we've got to do then is work out how to handle the fact it's intermittent, and also to shuttle it around the country. Because at the moment, I think the wires that connect Scotland to southern England can't carry all of the wind energy when it's available. But we can sort that out. Yeah, let's sort that out, and let's make the most of it when it is available.
I mean, this just shows how geek I am, but I'm sure I saw a programme on the National Grid that they were planning on building 2 bootstraps from the top of Scotland down to the south just to carry the excess wind energy from Scotland.
How cool is that, right? So the National Grid was designed around the concept of a very small number of coal power stations, often where the coal fields were. And now we've got to re-engineer it around essentially where the wind is, where the sun is, and by the way, a lot more local energy, so that we need to recognise that some of the savings we can have by not having massive transmission wires everywhere, because you can be taking solar power from your next door neighbours or from a local solar field, right? We can use some of the savings there to make green energy cheaper and more local.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting, especially now that you're offering a feed-in tariff. Obviously, solar's now not got a feed-in tariff from the government anymore. That's gone. That's been scrapped. But it's interesting to see that now you're experimenting with paying customers that feed-in tariff.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see if you do an agile version of a feed-in tariff. That would be interesting.
We have one.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, there are 2. We've got 2. I think they're called SEG tariffs, Smart Export Guarantee. Although we launched it obviously before the Smart Export Guarantee was mandatory. But yeah, one of them is a flat price, and the other one is a mirror of agile. It varies every half hour. But I was going to say, Nick, that there is, again, back to the way that the energy system is configured, I think it costs us between 6 and 8p per kilowatt hour just to access, I don't know, the 10 meters of wire between you and next door, right? So in the process of taking your electrons from your solar panels and moving them 10 meters, we're picking up the same cost as we would if we were shipping them much, much longer distances, because the network charging at the moment doesn't reflect the ability to essentially do peer-to-peer.
So yes, so peer-to-peer power sharing is a thing that I've seen before, and it'd be great to maybe do another interview with you when all this lockdown's finished and actually go over how that works. But yeah, I've seen a lot on buying and selling energy from your neighbour's solar panels or from your neighbour's grid storage battery that they've got strapped on the wall. So it'd be interesting to see how you deal with that. And you now made me want to look into buying a solar battery and a battery for selling grid on agile prices, because that sounds quite an inventive way to deal with it. Greg, I'd just like to thank you very much for taking the time out of your schedule to talk to me today. If anyone is interested in joining Octopus, there is a link down below in my description for a £50 credit. If you join Octopus, you get 50 quid, I get 50 quid. And if you sign any of your friends, neighbours, go down the street knocking on every door like I did, you'll get £50 for all of them, which is essentially Greg's giving you free green energy if you sign up enough people.
Yeah, actually, Nick, can I ask you how much you've made on that?
I'm knocking just from neighbours. I have enough credit to pay. I've paid no bill for over 12 months.
Wow.
Just from neighbours.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and thanks to a lot of my fans here on YouTube who've also used the link, I've been able to buy a brand new GoPro camera for filming, editing, this new microphone, these new headphones. So everything that I've got from YouTube's reinvested into my YouTube channel, and anything I've got from neighbours is just keeping me living and running for free. But it is, I mean, I'm a weird use case, but my sister, for example, she's had 4 months worth free of electricity just by signing up with friends.
That's amazing, and thanks, Nick, because I think the real thing there is we'd much rather be giving the money back to customers than to advertising sites and things like that. So at the end of the day, every company has to spend money to find new customers, and it's a great way of doing it. And I think when we speak to customers, by the way, more of them do it because they want to help someone be with a better company than are doing it for the money. And the money is really the reward, but actually people don't recommend a company they don't like.
Yeah, well, I don't want to tell you this because you might drop the referral program, but even if you stop the referral program, I'd still refer friends and family to Octopus. Like I said, just the customer service side of being answered quickly, Facebook, just the ability not to have to ring is a great help for me. Especially with people now working more flexible hours, I think it just makes a lot of sense.
Well, thanks.
So thank you thanks very much, Greg. Thanks for creating a fun energy company that people actually want to sign up to. Thank you very much for everyone watching. Please check out my other videos. Don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to have a look at the Octopus referral link down below. Thank you very much. Cheers, Greg.
Thank you, Nick, and thanks everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks.